Hey, everybody, it's Larry Kotlikoff back with Economics Matters, the podcast. I'm here with one of my favorite friends and former student, Guillermo Lagarde, and co-author, and just a terrific person. I guess it's been maybe 8 years since you graduated,
hmm
Guillermo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
around 2017, more or less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Guillermo was a terrific student in our economics PhD program. So he has a PhD in economics from Boston University, and you have a BA from
ITAM.
ITAM
hmm
in Mexico, a leading university in Mexico, as I understand it, in economics. So then he came to BU and hung out with me and some of our other buddies for several years, did a great thesis. And we were working together on putting together a large-scale dynamic model of global economic growth. And that study is finally coming out with a Oxford Review of Policy, I think just like next week, which shows a very interesting thing, which is that the US, because of demographics and because of catch-up productivity growth in India and China, at the end of the century, the US will have about 11% of world GDP. We have about 25% now, under some measures, maybe 20%, but that China and India will have 40%, could even be 50 or even higher, depending on assumptions, because they are, even India's demographics are going up in the sense the population is growing, China's is going down by about 400 million, but the productivity growth in both places is significantly higher than here. So consequently, because of their numbers, and if they become as productive as American workers, output per worker being the same times a much larger number of people. India is the biggest country population-wise in the world, and it's slated also to have about a $400 million increase population. So anyway, that's a very interesting study. It's on my website called The Future of Global Economic Power, kotlikoff.net. Guillermo was a key player in that, and together with Seth Benzel and Victor Yi and three Russian co-authors, because we were working with the Gaidar Institute in
hmm
Moscow. This is all before things went south between the US and Russia and also COVID. But Guillermo, great to have you. Fill in anything about, you're now working, you worked right after school, after getting your PhD, you went down to continue to work with the Inter-American Development Bank where you still are. So tell us
hmm
about your position there and then your other activities, because some of us think that you're in the Mexican Secret Service. You seem to be flying around all over the world, and nobody can quite keep track of what you're up to. So give us the story about then to now, and then we're going to start talking about Mexico. The whole topic of today is Mexico, the tariffs, the tariff policy vis-a-vis the US, how the Mexican economy is doing, how the new President Sheinbaum is holding up, the uh, drug situation, immigration, uh, the whole relationship with Mexico, and is it it seems like it's going downhill and it seems like it's heading further downhill. But you let's start with what happened to you the day after you left grad school.
Perfect. Yeah. And Larry, many thanks for having me here. It's always a pleasure to share thoughts with you and of course very good memories of the PhD period. And as you were mentioning, our Russian colleagues, very fine people and researchers, and very sad that we are not able to meet back and do some brainstorming as we did before. Anyways, so yeah, as you mentioned,
That's that's worth saying that the Russian people are not Vladimir Putin. They're just fantastic people
mhm.
when you get to know Russians. Uh, up close and personal. Of course, I have a name that could be Russian. I think it's Ukrainian, Kotlikov.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, I have them by the way in Mexico City when they were visiting, and I took them to the pyramids. And they're super nice people, and especially the our colleagues there. We were doing like really nice stuff. Um, well, and anyway, so yeah, as you were mentioning, once I was done with the PhD, I came to the IDB, heading something they call here regional studies, which
Yeah,
basically
IDB
was
is Inter-American Development Bank. It's a shortening of IADB, Inter-American
correct,
Development Bank. So it's like
correct,
the World Bank for South America. Yeah.
correct, correct. This would be the regional version of a World Bank. Um, I would say that the largest shareholder would still be the US and then Europe, right? Differently from the World Bank, the other member countries, Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, etc., they also have to invest regularly. So they keep like around 60% of shareholding of the IDB, no? So they are developing, but also they have to invest in the corporation. Um, so
Okay.
so the funny thing of the IDB is that it's not only like a bank that will just place loans. It has a really nice side which is related to capacity building and also research. No, but the beautiful thing of the research they can do here is that they are like super close to the governments, and they can actually do a lot of empirical testing with real data from the countries of the different things they do. So back then, I was heading the regional studies for Mexico, Central America, and some of the Caribbean countries, in topics that were mostly macro finance and macro fiscal. Uh, and then as things were moving on, I was offered to be the head economist for the IDB in Mexico, and I couldn't deny to that because I'm Mexican, right? So I was there. I had to move to Mexico for briefly, and finally, what ended up happening is that back then the guy who was going to be the Minister of Finance of Mexico during Andres Manuel López Obrador presidency, he called me. He asked me if I wanted to be his chief of staff and economic advisors. Uh, and I basically said yes. So I joined the government in the equivalent that you have here in the US, the CEA. In Mexico, that version is within the Minister of
Yeah.
Finance.
Council of Economic Advisors, President's Council of Economic Advisors. So you were
Hmm.
in the council, you were the chief of
Correct.
staff of the council. Would that be the way to put it?
Correct. That will be the right version for the Mexican case. No, and I was there like basically almost half of that government. And then I came back to the IDB now as head of policy research in areas related to public sector that involves from some fiscal topics, some financial flow topics, but also nowadays in even uh, the sort of things that we also write about automation and AI. You know? So that's basically where I am right now, and so I'm really cool, really fun because I'm able like to grab here and there a lot of the local data, and we can test and do interesting research there. Yeah.
How do you view South America in general, or Latin America in general? Is it getting better, worse, staying the same? Uh, we have, we could have a war this afternoon with Venezuela, it seems, between the U.S. Uh, so we know Venezuela has gone from a thriving economy, decent economy, to a
Mhm.
basket case because of the dictatorship, terrible policy. We know Chile has, I think, it's done well under my great close friend and buddy, Sebastian Pinera, before he passed away. He was the president
Mhm.
twice. And he was even thinking about running a third time, but not illegally, not in violation of the Constitution. You have to wait 4 years in between terms.
Mhm.
But during his administrations, even though there were lots of protests, people I think felt anybody not left of center was worth protesting continually. But so we faced a lot of protests, but the economy did well. And then I think more recently, under the current president and the other president between the first two terms of Sebastian, the economy more or less stagnated. So I think we have a good test case that liberal economic policies, free markets, can really matter a lot to a country pretty quickly, and especially in a small open economy that where people don't have as much trust. If you have a trustworthy leader, then the investment can flow in very quickly and get things rolling. I think we're seeing that to some extent in Argentina right now. Not that Malay is everybody's cup of tea. I'm about to go down to Mexico, to Argentina next week to talk possibly to the President Malay and other members of the government about uh, uh, about economic reform, about fundamental reforms that will secure their progress. But how do you see Argentina? How do you see Chile? How do you see Brazil? How do you see Mexico? Just in general, how do you see the whole region in terms of things like GDP growth, inflation, uh, capitalism, sort of, or socialism, rule of law, uh, political politics. Give us a
Yeah.
quick overview.
So just to, I think like whenever we speak about Latin America, the Caribbean, we should also uh, have in mind that uh, there is like this very large variance on the institutional traditions. No, you would say that Chile uh, has a very strong institutional tradition holding there. So it doesn't really matter if it's left or right who is in the government. The rule of law in general is strong, right? And of course that enhances whenever you have some policies that are like pro growth rather than others that might be not as pro growth, you know. And then you have the other countries, and there I will include my Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and all of these other countries. I compared to Chile, they are like very young democracies, you know. And as very young democracies, they will still have this struggle between what it means to have institutional strength, you know, and then you have this thing that is happening in the Americas right now, and this might also include at this point the U.S., which is that the current people who are voting in the countries, they reflect, they see it to the past, and they see all these institutions that other countries have been like pushing to build, and they're voting against them, right? So suddenly, transparency is falling down. Other institutions that were like organized to push for democracy and institutional capacities, they are like weakening. And when you see this and you see the service to the people, which is around our age and younger, they they wouldn't know why those institutions exist, right? So there's no ownership or the sense of ownership of those institutional frameworks that were built by our parents, right? And that causes a lot of the swings between one government and the other. You know? Here in the U.S., even though you have sometimes Republicans or Democrats, or in Canada also happens, you still move alongside things that are within the logic that the institutions are there because there's a larger picture where all these ideas have to coexist, right? In our countries, we're still struggling with this kind of things, right? So going back to the point of your question, I would say that in the case of Argentina, Wow, this is, I think, apart from the case of Greece, some 10, 15 years ago, I think this is one of these experiments that it happens every other 20, 30 years, where you come from a baseline that is like very, very bad, and you suddenly change everything with the policies that we all read at the books, right? And we study them, and we can see that a lot of the things, inflation was strongly controlled. It's still high in Argentina, but it's coming from 1,000, no, 3-digit inflation to a 2-digit inflation in record time, right? Um, I think also President Milei, regardless of, as you said, if we like him or not, I think the fact that when he got into office and he said it's going to be hard, it's not going to be easy, but it has to be done, right? I think that transparency uh, helped a lot for people to understand that they will endure some months of struggle, right? And then everything else becomes like communicational, like, okay, inflation is going down. The dollar is now being kept within a more logical, floating scheme. Um, and and suddenly you see like how businesses are like beginning to grow, right? I was there at the beginning of September, and you can see that business are like kicking kicking off. They're like beginning to move. You can see this the economic activity. You can see people moving around, consuming, etc. So I think that even though they know that things are not solved, the expectations, right, of what is coming is pushing them to feel that they can move out, consume, and boost the economy. And I've heard the vice minister of finance here, the IDB, a couple of times of how the efforts are being made, like to keep pace on the deficit, to keep pace on the revenue collection, to ensure that spending is not going out there crazy, and also like trying to the transfers to the different subnational entities are not getting out of control. That's not easy, no, and it's a lot of political struggle that is happening there, and the fact that it was validated with elections like 2 days ago, I think that it will help Argentina to try to see if the experiment actually places them in a new situation, a better one, hopefully, right? But once you're there, you let me know whenever you're back. How do you feel Argentina now?
Yeah,
Otherwise, if you take a look at Brazil, Brazil is back to Lula, and it's just like a confusing government, right? Because Lula was never perfectly a strong economic socialist. Uh, it was a progressive uh, politician, and but right now, even though Brazil is like always the leader in Latin America's largest economy in Latin America, uh, I don't think they're like getting into the game, right? The leadership game. They should be leading with the economy. They have a very large population. They have a very strong middle income based. And for some reason we're not observing that Brazil that like 15 or 12 years ago we saw, right, growing 7% per year.
Question: how financially secure do you feel? Do you have enough money to retire? How much is enough? And if you don't have enough, how can you possibly find that money before you retire? Tough questions. One smart answer: Maxify. Maxify is the powerful online planning tool that takes the guesswork out of retirement. Maxify compares your assets against your fixed expenses to calculate how much you can safely spend every year for the rest of your life. And it shows you safe ways to find more money. Developed by Boston University economist Lawrence Kotlikoff, Maxify makes a complicated problem like retirement planning simple. Maxify. Powerful, accurate, easy to use. Want some peace of mind? Make the smart choice. Maxify. Visit Maxify.com today to start planning. That's Maxify with an I. Maxify. Maxify.com.
of late we have President Trump imposing what 50% tariffs on Brazil because he doesn't like the way they treated
Bolsonaro.
someone Bolsonaro who has been just convicted. He's a convicted criminal, uh, and I guess heading to jail or in jail. It must be pretty hard for people in the countries that you're trying to watch over to be dealing with this kind of erratic
Yeah.
behavior on the part of the U.S., which has always been a steady, a steady presence in the world economy, and
Mhm.
steady presence in the world in the constellation of democratic nations, the leader of democracy.
And but just remember something, like Brazil, different from Mexico, uh, Brazil largest partner is not the US, right?
It's China.
So they can play a little bit more. They have a little bit more flexibility to do things. And also remember that Brazil is one of these countries that they got also Lula in prison for years, no? And until one of the highest court basically declared that he already paid enough, right? So and back then Biden did not impose tariffs, right? So I think that sometimes in countries that are like in these early stages or of democracy and rule of law, I would say that we would expect to see this, right? But but here I'm gonna go with my President Scheinbaum when she says that, well, there's some decisions that it's up to us to decide now, and I think the decision with the Bolsonaro thing, they're pretty clear. No, I think that maybe he should not be 20 years in prison, but maybe 5 he should, right? And if you feel the pressure of the U.S. and you decide to let free Bolsonaro, then where's the rule of law? No, he went into a procedure under the current framework. It's not
Right.
perfect, but they follow all the steps until the point where they got. No, and if you don't like that, then you need the people to vote to change the legislation so that it
Right.
changes the way the judiciary works. No.
So
Uh,
let me
mhm,
raise the issue of China and Latin America. If I think if Chile is doing a lot more trade with China than the U.S.
mhm, mhm,
I presume Brazil is,
mhm.
as you said. There are
Yeah,
probably other countries, probably the majority of countries there may be trading more with China than the
right.
U.S. I remember
Mhm.
20 years ago when I was advising uh, President Sanchez de Lozada about pension reform in Bolivia, going into the Bolivian airport to buy a toy truck for my son. Here's Bolivia, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, at least at the time. And I figured, well, this truck it's very inexpensive. It must have been made in Bolivia. You have all these poor workers, available workforce, and, good, high quality workers. I look at the sticker, it says made in China. And I was aghast that poor Bolivia had to import, rather cheap little toys.
Cheap stuff.
My
Yeah.
kid wasn't going to care. He just wanted to roll something. Um, so, do you see a realignment or further alignment of South America with China? I wonder if this entire process of announcing high tariffs and then backing off, but still leaving tariffs at a significant level across all our partnerships, oh, not our, well, former partnerships, trade partnerships, is really at the margin moving countries without that much publicity into the hands of China economically, and that we're also the US posture with respect to uh, NATO, Ukraine, Russia, uh, China as well, uh, that we are kind of digging ourselves uh, into our own little isolated economic world where, splendid isolation. So I presume, that means that, imagine Trump were sitting in his Trump Tower and had to, couldn't import anything from anybody around the neighborhood. Uh, couldn't get a haircut or couldn't buy produce at the local grocery store, had to plant everything on his balcony. Uh, you get a sense of the complete absurdity of this idea of
Mhm.
building trade barriers with other nations. I mean, this is the first law of economics. You do what you're
Yeah.
good at, not what you'd like to be good at, or be out of envy that other people can do. But you see that happening at all? You see countries telling you, officials telling you, the U.S. is nuts and it's time, and we're cozy. We're doing more trade with China as a result.
So I think if we see the map, we should trace like a line like around the Panama Canal, no?
Mhm.
And whatever is south of the Panama Canal, I I see very difficult that they will scale back the trade relations with China. It's just to give you a sense, Bolivia, Peru, Chile, Brazil, uh, they export most of their commodities to China. No, and now that everyone has this fuss and buzz with the rare earth, I mean, South America has a lot of it, and the primary guy who's interested on securing this is China. Has been doing it for years. Uh, you know
In
how
the
they
form of,
work.
what are they doing? Buying up the mines?
Right, right. The way China works is that they will get into an investment agreement with a country, but they will say like, yes, but I want to bring my machinery, my people in Taiwan, just like to secure the rights, the security rights for X number of years. No, that will be like the business as usual for a Chinese endeavor abroad. So a lot of these areas in Bolivia, Peru, Chile, you name it, they
Mhm.
have this sort of agreement. Ecuador with oil has the same sort of agreements, right? And it's very difficult like to get to them and being the US and tell them like I'm gonna raise tariffs to 100% if you stop selling this to China, right? Uh, and
Or if
unless the US,
you continue to sell it to China, yeah, right.
yeah, uh-huh. And unless the US is willing to say I'm gonna buy them from you, then it's complicated, right? It's complicated to ask them like to stop selling to the other country. And by selling commodities, also the different other value chains are being integrated. No, a lot of primary goods also are being sold across China and South America. Now, if we go above the line of the Panama Canal, that will be the other way around. No, there you have all Central America, you'll have Mexico, where 80-70% of trade and dependency falls into North America, right? USA mainly. And some of the other countries, maybe with Europe, will have their secondary or third trade partner. And for these countries, like when you speak about tariffs, they would do whatever is needed to preserve that, right? That being said, uh, most of the TA, the technical assistance that is regularly requested is about the diversifying, no, products and markets. So what this tells you is that for many years, because the U.S. was so friendly to the region, everyone was like in a comfort zone, right? Trading with the U.S., trying to get the AmCham coming to their countries so they can increase ties with American firms and vice versa. And suddenly, when all this is happening, right, all these restrictions, then the question is, maybe we should take a look into Europe. Maybe we should take a look to South America because Brazil is very big. They have the population maybe like 2/3 of the U.S. They also spend a lot of money. They eat a lot. No. So then why would I need to sell to the US if I can sell it to Brazil? So yes, there is like this behavior of trying to find a way to switch to another markets, right? But you and I know that it won't happen in 2 years. This kind of trade things, it takes like 5, 7, 10 years to mature, right? And they begin with trade agreements, and they have to deal with them. And most of the countries in Latin America wouldn't have free trade agreements with the US or with Europe, right? Because they never need it, because they could always use Mexico or Colombia as a proxy to bring their goods to the US. No, so it's difficult, right? And the US use that as a leverage to negotiate whatever they want to put there on top. Mm-hmm.
Want more money, less risk, and a better life? Buy Money Magic, a new book by Lawrence Kotlikoff, Boston University economist, personal finance expert, and best-selling author. Whether it's education, career, marriage, housing, investing, retirement, Social Security, IRA, or 401k decisions, Money Magic delivers scores of secrets to raise your living standard. Financial journalist Jane Bryant Quinn says Money Magic is a must-read. Nobel laureate George Akerlof says Money Magic is quite probably the best financial advice book ever written. Financial guru John Malden says, you'll love this amazing book. It's full of wit, wisdom, and startling paths to a better financial life. And columnist Scott Burns calls Money Magic a funny, brilliant read, offering wildly powerful, unconventional choices that can literally change your life. Get Lawrence Kotlikoff's Money Magic today at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and independent booksellers.
Yeah, but this is happening in context of many years, decades of a trade moving away from the U.S. toward China,
Mm-hmm.
bilateral trade. And so, you know, we come, we maybe open up our eyes and see, hey, we're trading with China. We've decided China is our great enemy, and
Mm-hmm.
it's time to try and suppress their economy and their growth. And of course, they're doing a lot of things on the military side to threaten us, or at
Mm-hmm.
least feel for us to feel threatened. They may be reacting to what we have on the military side. But here we approach Latin America with uh, a stick, not a whatever, a glove or a handshake. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Or with diplomacy or trade diplomacy, right? I'm pretty sure that they didn't need the stick, right?
Right.
Mexico is a different story, right? Because Mexico is also the border, and it has different things that are of sensitivity for the U.S. And but for the other countries, I'm pretty sure that the U.S. could be strong, trying to pursue trade deals and trade dialogue and secure markets back to the States rather than just like hitting, no? Mhm.
Yeah. So let's talk about Mexico. Um, so there's lots of issues here. Let's talk about, to begin with, immigration. I take it that illegal immigrants from Mexico into the U.S. is pretty well stopped at this point.
Mhm.
Is that
Yeah.
your sense?
So remember something like an interesting fact. Um, the net migration of Mexicans to the US has been negative since like 2010, 2011. No?
So let,
Of course, there are years where it's positive, but net migration usually is negative on the Mexican side. And there are multiple reasons. The first of it is Mexico has been doing great since Fox presidents in 2000. Even though we have the global crisis, it's still the economy has been growing, has been an open economy that has been trying to increase trade deals, and middle average income has increased in general in every single place of the country. Still not a developed country, but has been improving, right? And
so,
also,
so you have more illegal
mhm,
Mexicans in the U.S. leaving to
yeah,
Mexico
mhm,
than are coming from Mexico into the US. So if we put up a wall, what we do is
Retain them.
we
You're retaining
retain,
the.
yes, rather than letting them out, more people out, we end up with blocking
Mhm.
people from leaving. Uh, Really, I don't know how you can leave the country unless uh, you can't leave legally without you're demonstrating that you've been here illegally, and then you can't hope to get back in even legally.
Mhm. Right.
So now you are trapped inside the country. So this is, all these during these campaigns where Trump was claiming about uh, Mexican rapists coming to rape our white women, I guess that was the underlying message here. Um, and or to pollute our white bloodline, perhaps. The all this time, more Mexicans are trying to leave than come in, illegals.
Yeah.
On both.
Mhm.
Okay. So
And remember there's many reasons for this, Larry. So for years, so we have to think of the different sort of Mexicans that are living in the U.S. right now. So you have those that are like illegal because they jumped in, they have been working here and there with illegal documents that who knows how they got them, right?
mhm.
And they're there, so they're illegal, in terms of papers, but also financially illegal. No, then you have the other sort of Mexicans in the U.S. that many years ago they got here in whichever illegal or irregular way they could, and they enter in different programs to normalize their status. No, many of them they have a special green cards, they have a special status or permits, you name it. And this been like since like 2000s, and it had evolved, right? And these guys, they will be, quasi regular, but they will be financially legal in the US. They will have their bank accounts, they will own little shops, food trucks and things, houses, assets, right? And then you have people that are like fully legal. That could be under a visa status. It could be because they're already American citizens or formal residents in the U.S. Right. So the first kind is the one that everyone will think it's violating all sort of laws, right? The second kind is the one that they have been here like for 10, 15, 20 years, no? They have built assets, and suddenly they're knocking their houses and telling them, you know what? You got here illegally. Your documents are not allowing you to be a citizen yet or a green card holder. So I'm going to revoke this permit and you're going back home. And then the assets, who will keep the assets? And according to interpretation of
We're the children, right?
and the children, right? And but according to interpretation of the DOJ of early this year, if you generated resources and assets from an illegal source, then I can seize them, right? So you have this kind of people that before this administration, they will normally, whenever they reach like 60 years old or 60 to 70 years old, they will try to go back to Mexico because they wouldn't have a pension in the US, but they will have assets that they could spend in Mexico at lower prices, right? So then aging is playing a game here, right? You naturally speaking, Mexican migrants are in the second type that I described. They would like to go back to Mexico because it's where they can make more of their assets, right? In the last tranche of their lives. And now what you're doing is getting them, kicking them out, seizing their assets, and then their families, they're like just staying randomly in the US and
They
in
have
a
no
weird
incentive
status.
to try and leave. So one reasonable policy is to say, look, we're going to give amnesty to any Mexican to sell their assets and take their assets back to Mexico if they're here illegally. If they want to leave, we're going to put them in a beautiful airplane without shackles, without handcuffs, and
Mhm.
first class meals and fly them back to Mexico. It might be a lot of takers. So this is just the difference between intelligent and and bizarre, ridiculous policy, trying to show you're you're the strong man, you're the fascist, and then you start recruiting co-fascists to have a, I don't know, maybe your stormtroopers available
Mhm.
when you need them. Um, I don't know how bad Trump is and how close the analogy is to him, but he's certainly doing lots of things that are undermining our democracy on a daily basis. Freedom. How is what is the tariff situation with respect to Mexico? It's on, off the next day. My
Yeah,
understanding is that things that are covered by the second NAFTA agreement, for,
USMCA. Uh-huh. Mhm.
they can still come into the U.S. tariff free, but there are
Mhm.
other products that are subject to pretty high tariffs at this point. And then,
It's a 10% right now because it's
okay,
we have like a some grace period before next week or 2 weeks they will expire again, and we will be in this forever loop of discussions and frictions. So let me tell you something here. I'm just gonna point out something. uh, I wouldn't say anything that will, discuss the American decisions and their democracy system, etc. But what I'm gonna say is that in the past, the administration, when Trump was president, they asked Mexico, and it was back then in the government, like to basically they wanted us to make sure that people who were crossing all the Mexico lands from the southern border with Guatemala, that we knew that they wanted to cross to the US. What the US wanted is for us to make sure that we could identify them. Like they wanted us to have a registry of who were reaching the border so they can ask for asylum or the different status that the US may provide, and they wanted us to host them until they have the proper appointments to go to the border and have the interviews for the different status applications, right? And just to be fair, Mexico has also very harsh immigration laws, right? It's just that we do not enforce them, right? In Mexico, being illegal, it entails taking you to prison. No, even though we claim that we do not criminalize illegal people, no, but it's because we do not enforce what the law says. So we did a lot of effort doing that, but to be honest, Mexico wouldn't have the technological capacities nor the resources to respond to that request of the US. So then the US basically asked, if you cannot deliver that, then make sure that you're able to hold them before they get to the border, right? And I think López Obrador, the president, did he responded to the request of the U.S. in a positive way, saying like, okay, makes sense. We're gonna make sure that we have 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 national police, making sure that they will try to retain them before they get to the border, and then begin the registries. No, and what happened is that when Biden got into office, then the Mexican president basically decided that he didn't want to spend more resources doing this. So when I guess when this administration, new administration of the U.S. gets into office, they basically say like, hey, previously you agreed doing this, and you are not doing this. So then I'm gonna use a stick, right? So I wouldn't say it was unexpected. I think that also Mexico should have done better job, no? Even for our own national security, and maybe we didn't do it. That's part of it. No, now let's go to the trade side. The trade side is much more fun, right? I do believe, Larry, that regardless of the kind of diplomacy they're trying to pursue, I think there is an underlying need of revenue collection in the U.S. because the U.S. spends like crazy, right? Like you guys have like a credit card, like swiping like crazy, and you and I know that a destination-based cash flow, a VAT, will never happen, right? Or it hasn't been able to happen. So this kind of border tax, which is a tariff, right? It's just mimicking the export VAT that all the countries have, right? The import VAT, I mean. So all the countries, we have VAT. If it come a foreign good, we'll add it a VAT before it's being sold in the country, right? So every time I discuss this with the economists in Mexico, I always tell them, like, you know what? Of course, we like a world with zero tariffs, but you should be prepared to understand that what if tomorrow the U.S. decides that they want to call this a VAT, not a tariff, right? Well, then what are we going to do? Cry? No, we cannot cry. We should react. How we can react? With policy, with productivity, with different economic mechanisms that we have at hand, right? Now, that being said, the way that happens is a way that is difficult to digest, right? It's being faced as an unfriendly way, like to tell the partner that that they want us to react to things, right? Like saying, like, so USMCA, zero tariffs, and all the other goods are going to have 10%, and if you do not comply to this, you're going to have 25%. Now, of course, it's crazy, no? Because we don't understand what is the end goal, right? Is it something like related to immigration? Is this related to security? Is it related to drugs? Is it related to actual fairness in trade? Is it related to labor rights? And because there are many players and voices arguing different things, right? It's an unconventional way of treating the discussions towards a trade partner and towards a new trade, the revisions of a new trade agreement. Or
Well, yeah, I mean, I view this as kind of a shakedown, kind of gangster type behavior. You don't do X, we're going to threaten you to do, we're going to damage you, as opposed to negotiation. But tell us how the you know, how the well, I want to talk about the drug trade
Mhm.
and our pending developing war on the drug trade. But I also want to talk about President Sheinbaum and what she's done in her time in office and how she's responding to Trump. They seem to be on relatively good terms
Mhm.
as opposed to Trump and Lula, uh, or Trump and some other players.
How financially secure do you feel? Imagine a tool to help you make smart financial decisions. A tool that factors in all your financial data and shows what you can safely spend every year for the rest of your life. That tool is Maxify. Powerful, accurate, and easy to use. Developed by Boston University economist Lawrence Kotlikoff, Maxify takes the guesswork out of financial decisions at every stage of life. Maxify calculates what you can afford to spend now and throughout retirement. And you can run what-if scenarios to see how your finances might change by taking a new job, buying a home, or downsizing. Knowing the impact before you decide lets you make smarter decisions so you can finally enjoy financial peace of mind. Are you ready? Visit Maxify.com today to start planning. That's Maxify with an I. Maxify, Maxify.com.
So, what's her secret sauce here?
So I think she has done a spectacular work, and her job is amazing right now, right? Because she has been cool-headed, no, she has been able to first digest, listen, propose, and every single time she has the return with some sort of a victory, right? At least for the Mexican public. And if you see her ratings, she is like around 70% of you know
So she's a rock star.
is a rock star, yeah. And I mean, I'm happy to have her as a president, right? But apart from that, I guess she's facing probably the hardest job that any Mexican president could have had, which is an administration in the U.S. that is bold, that has a lot of mandate to move things around, you know, and also in a moment where she's facing a lot of challenges with organized crime, a lot of challenges with drugs, and with an economy that of course it feels uncertainty, right, and is slowing down. So it's like the perfect storm, and given that she has been able like to pursue a nice annual budget, she has been able like to make sure that talks with the counterparts in the U.S. has been cordial, and every time that there has been this threat of increasing crazily the tariffs, we have always come back with a reasonable amount of time to resolve any of the concerns that the counterpart has placed on the table, right? So so I think she has been doing a spectacular job there right now. I think it will only get much more complicated in the coming months, because what do we have in front? So we have the revisions of the trade agreement kicking off on March. We have the war drugs that the U.S. is pursuing, right? So when the U.S. declare as terrorists the drug traffickers or the cartels, that changes for completely the way that the Mexican financial intelligence has to approach organized crime, right? So let me give you an example why this is very important for the region. So imagine you have a cartel, no, that goes to this either Mexican or American firms or factories that are exporting to the U.S., and they ask for money as extortion, and if they don't receive that money, they will burn the factory, right? So according to the way that right now terrorism is applicable to the cartels, that factory that is paying an extortion is financing terrorism, right? So then I can go and sanction that factory, right? Or I can sanction the bank that is funding that factory, which is what happened recently, right? So that makes the Mexican authorities to open their eyes differently, to approach and tackle differently bank compliance, the integrity standards, but not only for the financial sector, but also for the firms, the avocado exporters, the lime exporters, the strawberry exporters that are like, you know, all the cartels are extorting them in multiple ways, right? So I guess that what is going to happen, Larry, is that the trade agreement between Mexico, the U.S., and hopefully Canada, it will increase some chapters. I'm pretty sure now, beyond the chapters of investment, of the different commercial things and regulation, I'm pretty sure you're going to see a chapter on economic activity integrity, aka security, and I'm pretty sure you're going to see a chapter of financial integrity, aka integrity of the financial banking and banking systems of the region.
When you say chapter, you mean agreements?
Within the agreement, the current agreement has like a little bit more than 23 chapters, right? Each of the chapters is every table that they're going to have to sit down and revisit and review terms. But I'm pretty sure they're going to add these two new chapters because.
So let's talk about, yeah. Let me ask you about independent of the U.S. Mexico is, our sense up here, at least my sense, is that Mexico is dominated to a large extent by these drug gangs, and that things might be getting worse, that their presence may be getting worse. We hear reports of people being beheaded and their heads are hanging in the towns. Can Mexico, can the president fight this war against these cartels without direct U.S. help? Forgetting that it's President Trump as opposed to a different president, doesn't make sense for the U.S. military to be working side by side with the Mexican military to stamp out drug cartels over an extended period of time, so that, this has been going on for decades. You have one, documentary or movie about, this, whether it's a Colombian drug lord or a Mexican drug lord, or they're interacting in both places, or uh, that where it seems like the country cannot kind of progress because of this. And I guess that was what the president of El Salvador, the conclusion that president reached. And he's, of course, engaged in a massive war on the drug cartels and put so many people in these what appear to be awful prisons. But the idea of ridding the country of gang members, that may be the only solution for Mexico as well. And I'm wondering what your view is, and what typical Mexican's view is, what the president's view might be on that.
Yeah,
Should,
I
for a different president who is much more congenial with Mexico, would it be smart for the president to say, we want to ask you for your intervention. We want to have an extradition treaty. You can arrest people, bring them back, and try them in the U.S. and
yeah.
on a routine basis.
Okay, so just I'm just gonna go back to the thing, and then you're gonna answer this. I think the realities in El Salvador with the gangs is very different from organized crime. Uh, I think that Presidente Bukele was able to pull off there wouldn't be able to apply in Mexico, because organized crime, they were like mafia. It's like a corporation, right? And you have multiple multinational corporations operating with different bases and places, and that's the case, right? We will need something much more closer to what Guardia di Finanzas in Italy did with Falcone and all those back in the days, in the 80s, 90s, or even the way the US handled differently also their own mafias some 80 years ago, right? But I would say, Larry, that the short answer is I don't think it's is that we need soldiers or Americans, something like that. I think what we need is to work on the integrity, anti-corruption mechanisms for the enforcement agencies in Mexico, right? Because we might have like 25,000, 30,000 police devoted to this. They are trained by the US. No, but the problem is the capture. No, the capture of the organized crime of these forces. Would the Americans be captured? Who knows? Maybe. We couldn't tell, because if they are going to pay you, they're going to pay you, and they have all the resources, right? I would say that rather than thinking bringing militaries to do these tactical things, I think it's about intelligence and follow the money. No, I think that technology should be better used.
You're saying that the military and the police in Mexico are basically afraid to engage with the cartels because their kids can be kidnapped or killed, or houses could be blown up. Then it seems like having American, uh, it's one thing to have intelligence, but then the enforcement, I think, that has to come from the U.S. Personally, I think this is just going on too long and it's too deeply ingrained. You know, we had uh, three Nobel Prize winners from last year who won uh, I guess one of them is Daron Acemoglu, and I'm not sure whether he had co-authored his other prize,
Robinson, no?
Robinson and Simon, right, at
Yeah.
MIT. Um, so at least one of their studies, I'm not sure whether it's by all three, is about these two towns on the border of Texas. One is the Texas side, the other is on the Mexican side.
It's in my state, in Nogales, Arizona and Sonora.
Okay. So we have these two towns, one's prosperous, the other's uh, very poor, and they put
Yeah.
this not just institutions, rule of law, and uh, clearly that's, you know, there's no geographic differences, there's no natural resource differences. They're literally an inch away from each other,
It's
and
institutional differences. I
yeah.
agree. Yeah.
So now that's obvious. I'm not sure that deserves a Nobel Prize, to tell you the truth. I think anybody who's driven from San Diego into Tijuana could have made that
Yeah.
observation, uh, but but these guys have done lots of fabulous work and deserve the prize for many
So
things.
let me give you a pitch. That's something that I think could make more sense, and I think it's much more related to behavioral things and incentives. I think technology and the capacities of the enforcement agencies, like the national police, maybe the specialized forces of the U.S., I think they could collaborate and it could work. Yes.
Mhm.
But let me tell you something. I always thought on this, and I know it's going to be super difficult, but there is something that happens in the EU, which is brilliant. And there's like some different sort of not maybe crimes. There's some procedures that they can be treated at the supranational level, right? I think that a way like recognizing that the US and Canada have better institutions, more mature institutions, and hopefully also less corruption than the Mexican ones. I would say that there are like some things like organized crime and the related predicate crimes that could be, attracted by a supranational court that could be in New York, that could be in Toronto, that could be elsewhere, right? Regardless of the fact that it was, uh, you know, initiated the prosecution or captured in Mexico. See, like there are
In effect,
courts designated.
import U.S. judges, if you like, or have the criminal either remotely or locally tried in the U.S., arrested in Mexico, maybe with the help of our
Yeah.
uh, security services, and brought to the U.S., tried, and then maybe imprisoned here so they can't escape the next day. I agree. I think that's what would be needed, and I think if the president Scheinbaum would propose that to President Trump, that might be the way to get those tariffs down to zero. Uh, so I hope she's listening to this podcast. We've gone an hour, Guillermo. This has been fantastic. I'm going to have you back on. We'll keep track. It sounds like things are certainly in better shape between Mexico and the U.S. than one would have expected in the first few months of this Trump administration. I think that has a lot to do with President Scheinbaum, and maybe a reality setting in to uh, the extremists working with Trump and to Trump himself. But uh, Trump does have a concern that's proper and important that other presidents have not been firmly enough focused on, which is the drug
Yeah.
trade. And it's, if I had my druthers, I think I would really consider legalizing drugs and taxing them to reduce the demand. And it strikes me that that could be a solution here that doesn't involve this other mechanism that we're talking about.
Mhm.
Meaning, let the drug cartels become private companies in Mexico, let them export their drugs to the US, let us tax them at the border. Good place for a tariff. Uh,
Yeah.
and and we may have less drug imports and obviously less violence in Mexico because they're going to be appealing to not to shooting each other to resolve disputes, but to going to the Mexican courts. So that's an issue, an idea that's been out there for years and worth considering. But maybe it's politically just a non-starter. But this president has, for all his foibles, he's into non-starters. So our president. Uh, so, uh, so I think that's a good part of the Trump presidency that he thinks out of the box or acts out of the box. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Hey, Guillermo, it's been a great pleasure. Thanks so much, and best of luck, and we will stay in touch.
Likewise.